Welcome to Financial Insider Weekly. I'm your host, Michael Gray, CPA. My guest today is Nancy Ross. Nancy is a licensed clinical social worker whose interest has always been in helping couples and families realize their goals of healthier family dynamics. Her company is Bauer, Shepherd, and Ross and Associates. As both a mediator and a psychotherapist, she works with individuals and families throughout their entire life cycle, including premarital and marital counseling, in helping them cope more effectively with life challenges. As a co-developer of a new approach to divorce, the collaborative team model, Nancy works as a divorce coach to help couples and their children face the difficult challenges of divorce. She's the co-author of Divorce, A Problem to be Solved, Not a Battle to be Fought. And she's also written numerous articles on divorce and continues to train professionals in the model both nationally and internationally. Nancy, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
It's a real pleasure. Now today we're going to be talking about how a collaborative approach can help make divorce a less painful process. Oh boy. You know, divorce is a tough topic anyway, but, you know, to find ways that people can work through it, I think is really worthwhile. And it sounds like an interesting system that you guys have sort of developed. So what is the difference between collaborative law and an interdisciplinary team collaborative divorce approach?
Oh dear, that was a mouthful.
Well,
collaborative law is really interesting in that sounds like a bit of an oxymoron, but it's where two lawyers agree to work together and keep the family out of the court system.
Okay.
So that these are very highly trained lawyers that sometimes I want to use the term, they have ethics above and beyond.
Okay.
So they're really looking out for the best interest of their clients. And they really do they sign an agreement not to go to court. So you asked about the interdisciplinary team model.
Yes.
Well, sometime back we looked at that and we decided lawyers really didn't know a lot about psychological issues, emotional issues, and believe it or not, even complex money issues in divorce. So we created a model where we address the emotional issues by having a coach who is a licensed clinician. And for the children, we have a representative called a child specialist that does nothing but advocate for the child. And for the people who really can use some financial advice and guidance, we have a neutral financial specialist. So together, the real unique concept is that it's a team. So we all bring our expertise, if you will, to the family, because you're going through divorce, most people haven't done that. It's brand new territory. They don't know how to handle, they don't know what the decisions are that they need to make.
Well, I think even people who've been through it before, there's going to be something unique in each, because you've got the dynamics of the personalities and so forth.
That's right.
Yeah. So we talked about this a little bit before. How did this collaborative approach get started? I think people would be interested to hear maybe a little bit of the story.
It's a great story. So this happened in Minneapolis in the early 90s. And there was a lawyer, his name is Stu Webb. And that again sounds a little strange because Stu is a Buddhist.
Okay.
And a practicing Buddhist. And as a family lawyer, he was just finding that watching the families go through all the dissolution, the conflicts that they found in the court system, and seeing how that was worse and feeling that he was a part of that. And it was so contrary to his beliefs and what he wanted for families. So he had a case with a friend. He just called up his friend and he said, can we do this without going to court? Can we actually sign an agreement and not go to court? Well, if you're a lawyer, this is really heretical. You don't do this. And the friend reluctantly agreed. And what they found was when people agree not to go to court, you don't have the threat of it any longer. You don't have people using it for leverage. Instead, you have confidentiality. and you have privacy. And I think it's one of the really key things that Stu promoted in collaborative.
Okay, that's great. So how does this collaborative approach differ from mediation?
Well, it's interesting because I'm a mediator, as you know.
Yes.
And I love mediation, and for many, many people, this is a really good choice. If people want services, if they want to learn something in their divorce, if they want to use that crisis to grow from, if they want to help their children specifically, if those are core family values, then a team approach, as you can imagine, would make a lot of sense. Because you have a divorce coach who's going to help you with the emotional, the intensity of the situation, to help you understand yourself and your family. You have the financial specialist who's helping you understand finances and even perhaps learn more than you ever have. You have your lawyer who's providing legal advice and guidance, so there's security in that. And your children get a voice. So you have a team, and that team is there as a container to support the family as they go through the divorce. So instead of breaking apart, what you have are families learning how to cooperate. I think one of the best things that we do is we have families sort of create their own mission statements. In other words, what do they want their family to look like after the divorce? Because almost every process, mediation for example, you're in the moment and you're going backwards. You're gathering information, you're making decisions. What we want people to do in collaboratives is to look to the future, emotionally and financially, so that they don't look back with regret. So I see the difference in education and support and the expectation that this is a learning experience.
Okay. So what is a divorce coach, and how's that different from therapy?
Well, sometimes people ask that and you do wonder, but it's different in that therapy, we have more time, we can delve deeper, whatever time the person needs. Well, we may look at their childhood, we may look at what shaped their ideas and their attitudes and their behaviors. As a divorce coach, it's very quick, it's very focused. For example, if I'm working with a client, so let's say you were my client, and you're saying to me, well, you know, it's hard for me to sit in the room with my wife because she's very nervous and she attacks me, and so I would be asking you, well, what do you want to have happen? How do you want to be as you're talking to your wife? What do you want to say? And so I would coach you in developing perhaps a script, how to breathe, how to settle yourself, so that when you walk into the room and you're talking with her directly, because it's the two of you that make the decisions, you're going to feel relaxed, you're going to be able to think more clearly, and you're going to walk away saying, I made a good decision because of that.
Okay. So how do children get a voice?
Oh, that's probably, I think, from my view, the most important contribution of the team. If you think about it, children don't get to say anything when their parents divorce. They didn't choose it. And often in the current adversarial system, they feel they have to take sides. And even families or friends will look at it that way, like, you know, whose side are you on, your mom's or your dad's? And it's a pretty terrible thing to do to children. So what we wanted to do was to have a safe place and a safe person, a licensed clinician who works with children all the time, knows them well, and yet in this kind of milieu, it isn't confidential. So we help parents prepare their children to say, you could say anything you want. We value your opinion and we're going to use it in making our decisions. So when the children come and they talk to the child specialist, they've been given permission by their parents to be open and honest. I can give you an example. We had a family yesterday where one of the children was very, kind of afraid of her father because her father had a bit of a temper. And the child specialist very kindly, very gently turned to the father and he said, you know, Susan's very afraid of you and she wants to be with you and she loves you very much, but she's really afraid of your temper. And so then as one of the coaches, his coach, I could look to him and say, is this news to you? Is this something you have heard before? He said, no, I've heard it before, but I just don't know what to do about it. So we could put in some resources for him, help him learn to manage that reaction. And at the same time, have both parents say to their children, we're so glad that you were free enough to speak up. And as the coaches and the child specialists, we also reaffirm the family, the parents, that they gave their children that kind of courage. So it's pretty amazing if you compare it with the court system. This is a very user-friendly, gentle process.
Let's say gentler process. I don't know if divorce can ever really be totally gentle. Okay, well, we're talking about children getting a voice. Now, so how do you do it without like putting the kids in the middle? I mean, that you get this conflict. Obviously, I love mom, I love dad. How do I? While they're getting divorced, how do I avoid getting torn up myself?
Well, you're right. That's the last thing in the world you want to do is have a child feel like they're in the middle. And sometimes they're in the middle because they're afraid to hurt their parents or they feel they have to take sides. So what we do is we have the child specialists simply ask them open questions and reassure them. And again, we have the parents reassuring. So it's built into the process. We also tell the children that whatever you say is helpful to your parents because they have a whole team working with them. And whatever you say to us will be helpful to your parents. And we always have the parents, for example, after the session yesterday, we coached the parents to go home again and talk to the children and say, we're really proud of you that you were able to do that. And particularly in this case, to have dad say, I'm really pleased that you were comfortable enough to talk about my anger because I'm going to work on it.
Now, the parents are making the decisions, so how are the kids going to still be validated or not feel powerless, even in sharing and so forth, when really they have no control over the situation?
That's true. They don't have any control, but just by being able to say what's true for them, can you imagine? To be able to say, I'm worried about this, or, I really want my mom to continue fixing me those great dinners, and for dad to see him and be a part of my coaching, and whatever the family dynamic is, the kids get to say what they want. That's in no other process that I know of. Do we really ask the children directly without putting them on the spot? There's currently a movement to have children do more testifying in court. You may know about that.
Not really, but it's interesting to hear.
Yes, so this is a way to shelter children and to give them power, but not too much power. Because I thought you were going to ask me, well, if the children say what they want, does that make them too powerful? And we always tell the parents that children give input, but you make the decisions.
So I'm thinking about all this wonderful communicating that's going on. Maybe I'll just do you have a percentage maybe where they say, maybe we can just work this stuff out?
Large percentage do. Have a couple I'm working with right now. And they said,
when we say a large percentage,
yes,
what does it feel like? 25%?
probably
10%?
about 20 to 25% feel they have a good enough relationship.
That they can sort of pick up the pieces and try again?
That they, in fact, we encourage them between our sessions. We tell them it's going to save you money.
Yeah.
And you're going to better your relationship. As long as we can find out, do they have the skills to do it? Do they have the emotional bandwidth?
Well, they're getting a lot of coaching here that seems like it gets them at least moving in the right direction.
That's what we're hoping for.
Yeah.
So we want them to sort of fly a little bit on their own because we're really looking at the future when that's what's going to happen.
Okay. Well, with this cast of thousands, and I'm exaggerating a little bit, but we're talking about all these different coaches and specialists and so forth. It sounds like this actually is a pretty expensive process. Is it?
Well, that's everybody's first take.
Yeah.
Why? And if I'm explaining this to someone, if you're sitting in front of me in my office, you're probably going to say that. Well, why do I need to pay for all these people? Why can't I just have a mediator and just do it? And that's a choice. But again, it isn't as expensive as you'd think. We think it's probably, in our research, at least half as much as what a court case would be, and a lot less difficult for the people going through it emotionally, because there's emotional costs as well.
Yes.
But I think if you really break it down, for example, we have a neutral financial specialist. Instead of 2 lawyers sending letters back and forth and phone calls, we have one person collecting the data, educating, running our meetings. That's really efficient. It saves a huge amount of money. We have coaches who are less expensive. Wish it weren't the case, but we're less expensive than lawyers. And when you learn from a coach how to kind of tone down the conflict, how to actually talk and problem solve together, that's a huge savings in money. In fact, I often tell people it's really money that creates the cost of divorce. So all in all, it sounds expensive, but a lot of times we'll break off and do individual sessions. We always ask the clients, what is your budget? And we try and sort of plan the process to fit that family.
Okay. Why would a couple choose to do this collaborative process instead of mediation? It's becoming more apparent to me just from our conversation, but maybe you can just sort of recap.
Well, I think that if you see this as a crisis and you want your children to have a voice, you want to have a voice, and you want to make sure that your decision is one that you're not going to regret looking back on. And that you feel the comfort and the support of a team so you can be the best you can be. It's a very different concept. You're looking at goals, you're setting goals for the future, you're getting the best possible divorce you can. It's not without conflict, but you have people there who are trained specifically to help you with that conflict.
Okay. So we talked a little bit about that there are public seminars and other educational things that you guys make available. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yes, we have just started what's called Divorce Options, and it's $40. It's on a Saturday morning, the third Saturday, and they can find out, your viewers can find out all the information by going to Collaborative Practice California. It's a website, has an enormous amount of...
Is that .org or... Yes. CollaborativePracticeCalifornia.org. Okay.
And they'll see there the divorce options. And that's actually not about collaborative. We're just very neutral in giving people every option that they can imagine, a lot of really good solid information about divorce. So it's very educational, and we're doing it through a nonprofit without any bias.
So what communities is that being offered in? Because it says California.org.
That's true. Yeah. Well, our local one is in San Jose. It's on Bascom Avenue. We've just changed our site from Campbell.
Okay.
And it's from 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock. So, and it's just packed full of information.
Oh, that's great. Well, that hope the word gets around, to help out a little bit. So, but we do have people that actually can see us from other places in California. So you actually have in Los Angeles area, Sacramento area?
They're all over the country, actually.
Oh, all over the country?
All over the country.
Okay.
And if you wanted to find out more areas, you'd go on the International Academy of Collaborative Professionals.
International Academy of
Collaborative
Professionals. Okay, and
yes.
that's a .org as well, I take it.
.org, yes.
Okay. So, folks, if you're watching from other areas, including from visiting our website, that can be, you may be able to find one of these programs in your community, and it sounds like it's very worthwhile for people that are, thinking of starting this divorce process to get some good, solid information before, getting into fisticuffs or whatever.
Yes. Find out what your options are, because the more you know, the better choice you'll make.
Great. I'm not sure quite where I am here, but maybe you could tell us a little bit about an example. Let's see. Okay, we got about 6 minutes. Brian just told me. So you can tell us a little bit of a case study, maybe, of how this has helped a family in this sort of a situation.
So I'm thinking about a family that I saw recently that came in. The wife was the mother. They had 3 children. She was a stay-at-home mom, worked very hard. One of the children was developmentally delayed, so she had her hands full. And Dad didn't quite understand where she put all her time. So coming in, he was sort of like, she needs to go to work, and she needs to go to work right away because we can't afford a divorce. And in this case, it was Mom who wanted the divorce. So it always makes a difference. So here's Dad, and he's confused, and he doesn't know what to do, and he's very much afraid of what the future brings. What we were able to do was sit down with the 2 coaches after talking with them separately, and I was Mom's coach.
Okay.
I said, all right, what are your goals? What do you really want? She said, well, more than anything, I want to be there for my kids. The divorce itself is going to be hard, and I want at least a period of time that I can stay home with my kids. And I said, well, do you think your husband's going to hear that? And she said, no, every time I try to talk to him, he gets angry and upset and says, we just can't talk about it. And so what I did was work with her in how to talk with him in an even tone, and also see if there was some common ground, like it wasn't going to be forever. Because when they talked about it, he thought, she's never going to go to work. I'm going to be an indentured servant paying for the rest of my life. And he wanted to help his kids, and he was really a very good dad. But that part he didn't quite understand. So we had what we call our 4-way meeting, where we sit around a table like this, the 2 coaches, the 2 parents. And I asked her if she could begin the conversation to tell Dad why it was she wanted to stay home, and what there was about his view that she could agree with. And we didn't have to do anything. They started talking. And of course, that's the best, when the coaches can just sit back and watch the couple have their conversation. It wasn't a fight anymore. He realized that realistically, of course, she had to stay home for a few years. And she also realized his fear and his concern that he wouldn't have enough money and he wouldn't be able to live his own life. So that's where we had a next meeting with a financial specialist to kind of look at what they did have and give them some ideas on how to maximize that. So they used all the services, including the child specialist. So this was really key for this family going forward, and I like to think they left in a really different way than when they came.
So was this a situation where they were able to maybe resolve their differences, or was it one where they actually decided to split anyway, but they were able to do it in a more amicable way? They
did divorce. You're bringing up an interesting issue, because sometimes people through our process will say, if we were learning this now, maybe it could be different. So we do get a very few who actually go into therapy and stay together.
Okay. Well, we're getting close to the end, maybe a minute or so. Maybe you could either sum up or maybe throw out a final thought related to this approach.
I think people don't understand the pain and the fear that accompanies divorce, and that no one should do it alone. And whatever they choose, whatever process they choose, think about their families, think about their children, think about the options that they can use a crisis to actually come out in a very different, better way than when they started. We really want families to remain whole and renegotiate the relationships so that they are really good parents to their children going forward.
That's great. Well, I really appreciate you coming today, Nancy. It's such a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you, Mike, for the opportunity.
It's nice to learn about this collaborative work. You know, I've had another interview here with Alan Noble where we talked about collaborative approach in the estate area.
Yes.
So, but I guess in the past it's been principally started in the divorce area. Right. So anyway, I think that this sounds like, I mean, in a sense, many of us professionals have been trying to work together in a teams.
It's true.
All along, particularly in the estate planning area and so forth. We've been encouraging it of attorneys, financial planners, insurance people, and so forth being together. But to hear also of it happening in the divorce, and particularly the concern, as you said, is of the children.
Yes.
Because we've seen from personal experience in our family that quite often, unfortunately, it seems like the kids sort of go nuts after a divorce. That
well, they can, and without support and knowing what to look for.
And so the next thing you know, somebody's in trouble or what have you, moving in with their boyfriend, and it's not really necessarily the appropriate thing to be happening. Folks, this is an interesting new area. We've got some community seminars that are available, services to be aware of, and maybe this can help you in working through some of these difficulties, maybe even to salvage your marriage, or at least maybe to part in a more amicable way and help your whole family in the process. So again, this is the beginning, we hope, actually, of a conversation for you to have, and maybe to want to get some more information from the website that you'll see at the end of this show and so forth, and that Nancy has mentioned before. So we'll see you next time on Financial Insider Weekly.